over the years, I've had comments like, "Why don't more people come to our meetings?" And it's not as true anymore because we're broadcasting our meetings and people can watch them, so they are really seeing our meetings in a way that they never could before. But I always thought it was a good thing. I mean, because we see the day-to-day traffic into our lobby with complaints, and I see it as a good thing that you don't have people constantly complaining in meetings. It might mean that the council is doing a good job.
Exactly.
Could mean that everybody's asleep in the community, but I don't think so. I think we give people a cordial experience, and especially the ones that are coming in here with a work-related thing, permit, for example. When somebody fills out a permit, you don't treat them like they're the enemy. They're actually going to help you. They're going to build something in your community that's going to add to your tax base. That's what they want to do, so let's help them. Let's accelerate the process if we can and make it affordable. I think our permit rates are as low as they can go for what we have to provide in the way of inspection and all that. That's, in a way, that's a protection too, because people don't realize that when your house is inspected the whole way up, it's a protection for you. I'm just a home person. I went away to college, a college kind of like Washington College, but somewhere else. And I really couldn't wait to get back home. And turned out a draft number 12 sort of intervened. It was the Vietnam era. And so I was lucky enough to get in the Coast Guard OCS, and which is in Yorktown, Virginia, which is a state that I'm very familiar with. I was commissioned and spent the first couple years in Norfolk doing port safety and law enforcement, oil pollution, and rescue at Group Norfolk, and that was really interesting. A lot of things happening there at the mouth of the bay and down the James River, intercoastal waterway. But I did have, after a couple of years, I had enough of that, and it was time to transfer. I asked for command, and I got the Kwajalein Loran A station in the Marshall Islands. I was a reserve officer, so I was kind of lucky there too. So off I go to Kwajalein, sit on an island for a year as commanding officer. And so between that and the skills that I've got in the first 2 years in the Port of Norfolk, it gave me all the administrative experience I needed when I got out of the service and came home. Got back here in 1975. I actually wanted to take a little rest, and but to get unemployment, you had 2 denials every 2 weeks. You had to report in. So it wasn't very comfortable after a while because I was getting offers for the jobs, and I was saying, no, I really don't want a job right now. And I really don't want to do this job or whatever. So finally, I saw this ad. It couldn't have been 6 weeks for, I guess, a grants writer for the town, building official, whatever. So
Who was the mayor back then?
the mayor was Phil Brooks, and Phil Brooks, I loved the guy. He ran a plant that serviced farmers, and my dad had been involved with buying grain and things from him in the farming days, and he was just a good old boy. In fact, we had to take the Friday bills out to his weighing station, where Royal Farms is now, and take them in so he could sign them. And my favorite saying in meetings didn't last a long time because Mayor Brooks would always say, "We'll take that under consideration." And it wasn't a dismissal because we really, they hired me because they were really upset with their own conditions. The town had a lot of slums in the Santiago area, which is Upper Calvert Street, Lynchburg Street, Prospect Street, and some of Cannon, and then Scotts Point at the other end of town on the waterfront. And there were lots and dozens, if not hundreds, of units that had outhouses over a frost-free sewer line in the back, across from the elementary school, Spikers Row, Hubbard's Row on Calvert Street next to the Uptown Club, an abandoned school site up there, a lot of junk cars on it. Really, I think they were ashamed of it, and they wanted somebody to do something. They didn't really know how, and frankly, I did not know how. But soon got connected with HUD in Baltimore. They were very, very helpful in giving us major grants for acquisition of properties. And you know, because you've looked through this book, that the properties were so voluminous that the first appraiser did a book of them, and it has a lot of photographs of things that you would not believe were there unless you had been here.
Yeah.
So first job was to really get ownership of them. Second job was to find a place for those people to live. And third was to build places where low and moderate income people could build. So you wanted to phase it. What we did was we didn't demolish units till we had an alternative spot. So we built Calvert Heights on an area that didn't really have too many houses on it. It had an ice plant and the original Chestertown Lumber Company on High Street. It had 4 or 5 tiny little row houses that were on Lynchburg that we left there until we built Calvert Heights, and then we removed them. But that was our relocation resource, 22 units. Yeah.
How long a process was that for you?
Well, because there was really nobody to show me how to do it. It took a while to get the local banks interested in funding the creation of Calvert Heights. I think it was, believe it or not, I think it was about $800,000 that we were borrowing. The next project that we did was on Cannon Street. It was the old nylon factory, which had become a source of crime and vandalism and all sorts of stuff, 600 Cannon Street. So we didn't tear that down. We built 16, we had an architect design 16 units in it, and we funded that with a capital grant. So that was a better way to do it, a different way to do that. The first project, Calvert Heights, had been funded by the Section 8 funds, the rent that was going to come in. In the meantime, we'd also done the high steps on Cannon Street on the 300 block, which was a reconstruct of the look of the old one, which had 8 units, into 6 units. The first row, they were row houses, and they're called the high steps because they had high steps in front of them. They're there. But they were only 10 feet wide in the beginning, so that when we went to 3, it looked the same, and it passed the muster with the the state historic preservation officer. So that was a lot of fun, and it just took care of our people. The original office was right next to the fire hall. It was Lee's Restaurant. It was a narrow 2-story building, and the town hall was in the front room, and the side were the offices, and the rear was the police station. It was teeny, and they were connected by a bathroom on one side and a doorway on the other, or you could go outside and come into the police station. You're South Water Street. One of the houses was a box that a boat had been brought in. I mean, really, I don't think it was any more than 6 by 6 by 30, and it had been made into a little house down there. And it was some bad housing there too. Railroad Street, I think they called it, which is now South Queen Extended, had a boardwalk on it, or some people called it the boardwalk, because the tides would come in through the pipe that drained most of the town and then flood that area. It's all been elevated, and the basket factory was next door, looking like a Greek ruin. Yeah, we got a lot of criticism for buying the marina, and for what we paid for it. But our philosophy was that we were eligible for all sorts of help, grants from DNR, and we got them. We got help from USDA, and I really am proud of that, and I'm still upset about the fire at 98 Cannon. That's not our property, but it's still doing well even with that, being out of business. And hopefully that'll get fixed sometime in a row, become something, because it's a beautiful facility, and you really know that when Sultana has their downrigging. We're spectacular then, but it's a great launch site, and we had problems with that, getting that thing poured. The tide came up after the first pour and just decimated the bottom part of it, and the whole thing had to be redone. Dredging is a constant problem on this side of the river, so we're going to do some touch-up dredging with a grant that Case got for that. But it's something that, like the mayor at the time said, people are going to come here by boat. We want them. That's how they came here originally. We're not going to be a port, because little known fact is that you can't dredge anywhere except that what has been dredged since 1970. If you haven't dredged it in that time period, it's shoals and you can't touch it. Whether you're the Armory or whatever, you can't create a waterfront area there with depth of water. It's really got. It's not doing the whole job yet, because it would still owe the council some of the early money that before it got on its feet, before we could actually. But over time, it will. And we'll forget that we had a bond issue. The bond issue is actually payable now. The first 10 years are up, so it could be sold. But I don't think the town would want to sell it. So is it a good investment? Well, was the Wilmer Park a good investment? Probably would be, but we're not selling it. What would 6 acres cost now at Wilmer Park?
No.
I'm positive about one thing, and I don't know whether it was COVID related or not, but this town has become, again, a popular place to build. We had over 37 houses built in the last 1 year period. They completed the village at Chestertown on Sheeler Road, D.R. Horton, and we've had a lot of infill on Cannon Street, elsewhere. Really nice houses that fit. The Historic Commission's done a nice job of making sure that they fit with the community, and I'm just really encouraged by the fact that people want to live here. Okay, that's a good sign too. That's like not having people raging at you every meeting. It's another good sign. Plus, we're in a better financial position than we were during over 10 years of the Great Recession, because it's like a scorpion. It had its tail, because things didn't really, even after it was over and the recovery was in people's 401ks and all, that the values of property did not rebound until, say, 2016 or 17. So, and then you get the argument like, gosh, I can't pay these taxes now. But that's a small price to pay. We're in good financial shape. The challenges are meeting whatever it is that people are going to want in the future or expect from the town.